I want to bring in NBC's Aaron Gilchrist in Tallahassee. David Drucker is senior writer at The Dispatch. Here with me in studio is former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst Paul Butler, along with Symone Sanders Townsend, former chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris and co-host of The Weeknight. Paul, take us inside that room. What's your best assessment, knowing how these things can work? And we know this is not regular, but what's happening now? What are the discussions?
They're trying to find out whether she has any information that could lead to charges against other people. So in the press briefing today, President Trump emphasized he's especially interested in former President Clinton and Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard. Now, just like there's no evidence suggesting that Trump was involved in sex trafficking, there's no evidence so far suggesting that those other folks were interested or involved in Epstein's sex trafficking.
Or in fact, anyone else. This has been investigated, litigated, relitigated, right?
That's exactly right. And so Ms. Maxwell is trying to get out of jail. So she will say what she thinks she needs to say in order to get the Department of Justice to recommend a lower sentence or to get President Trump to pardon her. Her history, Chris, is the opposite of cooperating with law enforcement. In 2021, when the FBI showed up to do a search warrant at her house, she hid from them. They found her cell phone wrapped in tinfoil, which she apparently thought would prevent it from being wiretapped. When she was deposed in 2016, she said that she had no knowledge of any underage girls being on any of Epstein's properties other than one person. And she said that as far as she knew, Epstein had only had sex with two people other than her. At her sentencing, the judge said she had not accepted responsibility for these crimes. So whatever she says, there's no reason to believe it. She's not credible.
So, Aaron, as that's going on inside, what's the scene outside? What can you tell us about what's happening at the courthouse?
Well, Chris, we know that the key players are very likely in that meeting, that interview again today. We were able to see some of those players coming into the courthouse this morning right around 9 o'clock. And since then, it's really been radio silence. We don't know from the Department of Justice's perspective a lot about what they've been able to glean or what they're trying to get from Ghislaine Maxwell. We know that the Attorney General yesterday, after meeting for more than 4 hours, we believe, didn't have much to say coming out of the courthouse, and late last night posted on social media that simply that he had the meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, and he said that he would share additional information about what they learned from her at the appropriate time. That's the indication we got from the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. The lawyers for Ghislaine Maxwell have had a little more to say in the time that they've been coming in and out of the courthouse here in Tallahassee. Mr. Marcus saying today that he was grateful that the government is trying to uncover the truth, the words that he used. I want you to hear a little bit more about his perspective on what's happening with these meetings and what the end goal might be.
We're hoping for another productive day. You know, Ghislaine has been treated unfairly for over 5 years now. If you looked up scapegoat in the dictionary, her face would be next to the definition, next to the dictionary definition of it. So, you know, we're grateful for this opportunity to finally be able to say what really happened, and that's what we're going to do yesterday and today.
And so we know that there are people outside this courthouse paying attention to what's happening. There, a senior Justice Department official tells NBC News that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, had been briefed on the meeting that happened here yesterday and is continuing to follow what's happening. At the same time, there are members of the public who are very much aware that this is happening. We were able to see a plane flying overhead here outside the federal courthouse with a banner on it that said Trump and Bondi are protecting predators. This is an organization called Ultraviolet that's put this banner up in the air here, trying to make a point about the victims who the victims of Jeffrey Epstein sort of having been betrayed by this additional conversation with Ghislaine Maxwell that, as your guest noted, that perhaps the Maxwell team hopes will lead to some leniency after we know she was sentenced to 20 years in prison back in 2021, Chris.
Aaron, thank you for that. Symone, scapegoat. Ghislaine Maxwell as a scapegoat. This is what the DOJ said she was convicted of. Heinous crimes against children, including a scheme to sexually exploit and abuse girls as young as 14. And then Maria Farmer, who is one of the women who says that she was abused, describes Maxwell this way.
I've never met a more predatory, terrifying human being in my entire life, and neither had Virginia Giuffre, and neither has Annie, or Anushka, or many girls like Shantae Davies. There's hundreds of us that were preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell. She's a very dangerous person, and she threatened my life on many occasions. I've had to move and be in hiding because of this predatory child predator and just victim predator. So it's completely unacceptable for anyone to call her a victim. The woman is not a victim. She's a victimizer.
A victim, a scapegoat. So what we're hearing is this isn't just that she has lied. This isn't just that she tried to do some things that would indicate she was trying to evade police. What we're hearing is that she's flat out dangerous. How should people account for that if and when we ever do learn, as Todd Blanche suggested in his post, whatever comes out of this?
Ghislaine Maxwell went to trial. And I don't think people should gloss over what Paul noted, that the judge in that trial said that she never expressed remorse. And I would go further to note that they underscored she never said she did anything wrong. She groomed these young women. Maria Farmer mentioned Virginia Giuffre in her comments last night to our colleague Jen Psaki. At 16 years old, Virginia Giuffre said that she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell while she was working at Mar-a-Lago, I would note, where Donald Trump is his, the summer White House. And Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her and groomed her, and then passed her around to some unnamed associates. So this is who Ghislaine Maxwell is. And so I'm just kind of like, the lady has just been, for lack of a better term, tight as a tick for almost 10 years about this. What would make anyone believe that now all of a sudden she has new information? I thoroughly believe that the Justice Department in 2017, 2018, 2019, the Trump Justice Department, because that's when he was president, if there was credible evidence where they could have convicted someone else, I believe Maureen Comey would have done so. She was the prosecutor who was on the Ghislaine Maxwell case. So I think that, frankly, we have to separate two things here. One, you have Republicans, Democrats, MAGA Republicans, QAnon people who are calling for the release of the quote-unquote Epstein files, which we should note are hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, grand jury testimony. Some of it is digital information that was found and seized at Epstein's home or Ghislaine Maxwell's home, because the FBI raided both, and other documents. That book that we're now hearing about, the birthday book, that's an example of the Epstein files. Those things, the hundreds of thousands of pages of that, we are only talking about this because the Trump folks made this a thing during the campaign. They whipped up the conspiracies around this. They said, we're going to expose the deep state. And then now it seems like once they found out that Donald Trump's name appears in the files, in these, again, hundreds and thousands of pages of documents, not saying that he is a pedophile, to be very clear. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they said his name is in the documents. All of a sudden, the deep state conspiracy that they whipped up, that they started, it doesn't matter anymore. That is why this matters, because now I have more questions. Now America has more questions. Well, what is going on? Why don't you care anymore? What are you trying to cover up? And at the heart of this, we are talking about children. And I just have yet to hear anyone from the Justice Department, the White House, talk about the children, the victims of these very heinous crimes. It is sickening.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that. But when we see Todd Blanche saying that he'll reveal whatever at the appropriate time, one of the things we talked about on this program yesterday, Paul, was about how typically a DOJ lawyer would go in there who had been on a case like this for a very long time, who has done a deep dive over a period of years, and is going to know on its face when they're being told the truth and when they're being told the story, when the perpetrator's lawyer says, oh, well, there's corroborating evidence. That DOJ lawyer would know what exists and what doesn't exist. So does Todd Blanche, who, to be fair, is new to this, comes in, when might we know what the appropriate time is? Don't they have to go back then and take all of this and have it be looked at by people who know this case intimately, one of whom, by the way, Jim Comey's daughter has been fired?
Hopefully we will know at some point, but we have to, understand whether the Deputy Attorney General believes that he's representing the United States, which is his charge, or whether he's representing his former client, Donald Trump. We can be sure that he's asking Ms. Maxwell, what you got on Bill Clinton? What you got on Larry Summers? The question is whether he's asking and how hard he's asking what you got on Donald Trump. Do you know why his name is apparently all over these papers? And certainly, there's not a whole lot of attention to the victims and survivors here. To Simone's point, in the indictment and trial against Ms. Maxwell, what we learned is that she targeted vulnerable girls. She would look at people from impoverished backgrounds or who grew up without a dad in the home. She'd ask them about school, about how things were going. She took them shopping and to movies. All of this was to groom them or to do these massages for Epstein and worse. So again, when Trump is asked, will you pardon her? And he doesn't summarily rule that out. What does that tell us? And last thing, Chris, is so we know that yesterday there was a long hours of interviews with Ms. Maxwell and the Deputy Attorney General. He certainly reported the results of this to the Attorney General. Then the question is, did Bondi get on the phone and talk to Donald Trump? Now, that would be highly unusual, but the fact that it's the Deputy Attorney General interviewing this witness and convicted felon, that's also highly unusual.